The Sam Sorbo Show is brought to you in partnership by the Herzog Foundation.
Well, hello there. Today's guest, I'm very excited about this. He's a veteran educator and the president of a nonpartisan network that empowers teachers and the public with trustworthy insight into education policy and the unions. He'll also share some highlights from his recent article on how America's stagnant NAEP scores reveal what he calls dead ed and why it's a wake-up call for all of us. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Here we go.
Sam Sorbo,
Sam, welcome back to the program.
I'm glad to welcome Sam Sorbo.
It's great to have you here.
All right, welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. My guest is Larry Sand. He's a respected contributor to For Kids and Country. He's the author of a hard-hitting article, America's Dead Ed. And in it, he breaks down the latest NAEP scores and the results that expose this devastating decline of our public education system, while pointing directly at the teachers' unions and the role that they've played in its collapse. Larry, it's great to have you with us. And there you are.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
So I read this article, and I've been watching this from the sidelines for quite a while, but to read it in black and white was frustrating. And you are so eloquent about sort of the destruction that's happened. But why don't you spell it out for us? So the National Assessment for Education, what's the progress, right?
Yeah.
It's abysmal.
Yeah, the NAEP is given every few years. It's given in different subjects, and I'm a former testing coordinator. I was a testing coordinator at my middle school, and I can say that the test is given with the utmost professionalism. They don't cherry pick students. They pick students at random, and it's not political. And they basically nail it. And the latest NAEP is things just keep getting worse. The COVID freak out, there's no other way to state it, which shut down schools, certainly brought attention to the fall, but the fall long preceded COVID, and we're basically in free fall.
So where do we stand now? What do the results point to right now?
Well, I mean, right now, let's say between 2013 and 24, like the lowest performing students, the 25th percentile, lost an average of 12 points compared to an 8-point decline among charter students. Student proficiency levels have stagnated since the early 90s. And in 4th and 8th grade reading proficiency at an average of 30 to 31%. 30 to 31%. I mean, what else can you say?
Well, how do they, I always have to ask, how do they define proficiency?
Students who can actually read and understand what they're reading. It's basically very simple.
And it would be at grade level, but I mean, I know that we've dumbed down the grades over the decades. We've dumbed down the grades. So now an 8th grader is not nearly as capable as an 8th grader at, the turn of the century, last century.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's definitely grade inflation with grades, right, meaning how students do on tests, and students. There's also the phenomenon of what's called social promotion, where somebody could learn 0 in 7th grade and they get moved to 8th grade because they've had the, quote, 7th grade experience, end quote, as the principal once explained to me. Now, to me, if you can't add 4 and 4, you're not going to do very well at algebra. And we recently had an example of an illiterate who graduated high school with honors, and the person was illiterate. They're suing now.
That's in Connecticut.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, she can't read.
Yeah, and you not only do you graduate, but you graduate with honors. I mean, if there's one instance that shows you how corrupt our system is, it's that. And I'm what's called an abolitionist. I don't think the government has any place in education. That'll never happen, I know. So I believe in universal school choice. But it's important to note that the literacy rate was higher before public schools started. If there's any bigger indictment, I don't know.
Okay,
When
perfect.
people have homeschooled and had small public school, non-government schools, I should say, in the 1830s, 200 years ago, their reading scores, they were more literate then.
Right. Right. In fact, I just wrote an article about that also. But in your article, you point to teachers' unions as a driving force behind the decline of government education. So
Yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead
Well,
and make that connection.
the teachers' unions are probably the worst thing that ever happened to education. If you, first of all, they have seniority clauses where if teachers have to be laid off, it's not the poorest performers, it is the latest hires. And this actually happened to me. I was teaching in New York in 1975, and I lost my job because the city was going bankrupt. And I couldn't I subsequently learned about the seniority system, but I didn't understand that because I may not have been the greatest teacher in the world, but I was a lot better teacher than a lot of the people who kept their jobs. And I couldn't figure out why I lost my job, and it was because of seniority. And then you have tenure, whereby I think in California in 2012 was a case called Students Matter, and they dug into the statistics a little bit, and they found that I think it was 10 teachers out of 300,000 lost their jobs, 10,000 tenured teachers, or as it's called, rightfully called, permanence. In California, after teaching for 2 years, you have permanent status. Do you know of any other job where you are permanent after 2 years? No matter how regally you mess up, you still have a job. And in a nutshell, this is why, one of the main reasons why education has gone so far south is because the unions and all their rules, and especially in my state of California, the CTA, which considers itself the fourth co-equal branch of government, and they are, rules the roost. And it's
The
a very,
CTA
very
is the
bad thing to
California
do.
Teachers Association.
The California Teachers Association. It's an arm of the 300 million member National Education Association, which is not only the biggest teachers union in America, it is the biggest union in America.
3 million members.
Yeah, give or take a few. They lost a few, but don't worry about them. They always up their dues, and they're not lacking for money.
So what you're saying is the connection is that you can't get rid of bad teachers. Bad teachers are automatically grandfathered in, even if they are bad. And we're talking about teachers who maybe have been teaching for 30 years and they're kind of fed up and they're sort of tired of doing their job. And so maybe they don't really show up as they should. They're not as energetic, say, as perhaps a younger teacher who really wants to, has embraced this dream of teaching young people, right?
Yeah. No, I know from firsthand experience. I taught for 28 and a half years, and I was burning out at the end, but I retired. But if I didn't retire for whatever reason and I kept going, I would not have been the teacher I was 10, 15, 20 years before. I
But
just
you
had
would have
it.
been kept because your job was safe.
Excuse me?
You would have been kept because your job was safe.
Yeah, they couldn't fire me. I knew it. I mean, the only way you get fired is basically if you're a pervert, and even if you're a pervert, you have to go through hoops and spend millions and millions of dollars. And I had a principal I was kind of close to at my middle school who said she didn't bother getting rid of the bad teachers. She just sort of moved them to a place where they, had smaller classes and could do less harm. It's the process is so onerous and so expensive that most principals don't even try anymore to get rid of bad teachers. Do you know of another field where this is true? In private industry, you do a bad job. Sorry, John, you're out the door. Goodbye. Go find something else to do.
Yeah. Other areas of government, though.
Yeah, well, it's the unions that did that.
Right.
It's and they never should have been legalized in the first place. Because you're basically electing the people you're sitting across the table from. It's corrupt.
So what's the thing that most people probably don't realize about the unions And what's the first step to solving the problem?
Well, unfortunately, the union's so powerful, I don't think you're going to get rid of them. I can't honestly say what most people don't know, but and that's why short of getting rid of the unions and excuse me, of getting the government out of education totally. I fervently believe in universal school choice, where every parent should be able to use the publicly funded money to send a child to a school of their choice, public, private, home, religious, non-religious. It should be a parental decision, and that's why I don't use the word school choice too often. It's about parental freedom.
Thanks for tuning into the Sam Sorbo Show. You know, we are in a battle for our very nation, a nation that was founded on Christian principles and on the Bible. The Ten Commandments is the basis for our rule of law. But these days, when you go talk to people on the street, you'll find that most of them don't even know what rule of law means. And that's why I'm so proud to have Herzog Foundation as a sponsor of my show. I also love what they do because they seek for the benefit of Christian education throughout the nation. So Herzog Foundation is a wonderful partner for us here at the Sam Sorbo Show. Thanks for watching. Spark curiosity and inspire discovery with Light Lab by Suzanne Schera. This hands-on, engaging curriculum brings science and faith together, exploring topics like energy, light, and the wonders of God's creation. Perfect for homeschooling families, Light Lab helps kids discover and develop a deeper understanding of science while growing their faith. Visit lightlabetc.com and use code SAM10 to get 10% off your order. Illuminate your child's education with Light Lab today.
I fervently believe in universal school choice, where every parent should be able to use the publicly funded money to send a child to a school of their choice, public, private, home, religious, non-religious. It should be a parental decision, and that's why I don't use the word school choice too often. It's about parental freedom.
Nice, because we already have school choice. You as a parent, you can send your child to any institution
Right.
that is willing to take your money if you have the money. So
Well,
we
right, but
already have school choice.
that's the big if you have the money. So yeah,
Right. So if the
rich people
government
have school
sends,
choice, but they can send the kids to the toniest private school around. But
right, and they're eligible for government funds just like everybody else.
right, yeah, well, that's fine. You know, when you go to the supermarket, rich people don't pay more money.
Right. But what do you say to the people who say, okay, so you take your government dollars and you go to the private school, and now the private school is a government school because it's taking government dollars?
Well, but that doesn't make that. I know that's an argument that people like public school exit use. They don't like vouchers. As I said, ultimately, the government should be out completely. It's not a perfect vouchers or school choice or parental freedom. In that sense, it's not a perfect system, but it's better than what we have now, because if a private school doesn't want to take those students, they don't have to if it's a private school. But most private schools are fine with that. They'll have more students. But it's all about
And then
choice.
what happens when the government's regulations follow the money?
Well, that would be a problem. But then they're not really private schools anymore if they're full of government regulations. Then it's
Right.
sort of a government-private duopoly.
Right.
But
For
universal school choice is certainly better than what we have now. It is not
Well,
ideal.
it's definitely a step.
Yeah.
I just question whether it is a step in the right direction, because a short-term improvement might be a long-term pain in the butt. And that's more the way that I see it. So for instance, in the state of Florida, if you take the money, which we have school choice, what they call school choice, and it's sort of a voucher ESA, education savings account program. If you're a homeschooler and you take the money, you're no longer qualified as a homeschooler. You are now classified as a government schooler under the regulations of the government. And in fact, in the state of Florida, I know I just heard that the woman who's in charge of the regulation of homeschoolers believes that there should be more regulation of homeschoolers.
All right. Well, I'm certainly anti-regulation, and the system as you describe it is far from ideal. But I maintain that it's still better than what we have now, because at least you're escaping the union rules. Because there are a few exceptions, but basically private schools don't have unions. So
Until the government regulates that they must have unionized teachers. It'll be perfect until then.
well, yeah, that I've never heard that. I mean that's
You won't hear that until they decide to do it.
well,
And then
okay,
you'll
well,
go.
yeah. I mean, we could do a lot of ifing here, but uh, I still maintain that getting the less government, the better, because
Yes.
the government has made a mess of things. Our government is maybe good at certain things, but it's certainly not good at education.
I just wonder if we can make a list. It'll be a short list of what the government is good at. And I think that because we went to school, you and I, right, attended school, we are predisposed to believe that the government is the solution.
Mhm.
And to that, I'll just add briefly, because we are on different sides of the school choice debate. When you condition people to get government funds, you are conditioning them towards something, and you are creating a dependency
Okay.
that perhaps didn't exist before. So,
Well, let me turn the tables here. What would you do? Because as I mentioned before, I'm an abolitionist. I think the government should be out completely, and that school choice is second best. So I propose to you, Sam, if we don't get the government out of school completely, what kind of system do you propose?
well, first, my first order of business is to turn all the school boards over to parents only. So you have to have a child in the school to serve on the school board.
Mhm.
And then the school boards, I would turn the training over not to the unions, because the unions now train the school boards, and the school boards are trained to rubber stamp whatever the union trained superintendent of schools wants. So that's the first step. And then I think that you're right. I think that the unions have a juggernaut of control over the schools, and we have to do something about that. And I mean, that's partly why your article intrigued me so, is because you lay so much blame at the feet of the unions. I lay it more, or I have in the past. I hadn't considered that to the extent that you put it. I lay the blame at the institution itself, because schools fail to educate, and they
Right.
only succeeded in educating because there was so much support at home for the education of students. But now that the home life has become disastrous in many instances,
Right.
we've had the destruction of the family. I think that the schools can't accomplish actual education, which is why they've all switched over now to indoctrination. Um,
Okay, I appreciate that, and to a certain extent, it's true. But I taught in inner city schools for a long time, and you can educate those kids. And I'll use Jaime Escalante as a perfect example. He was an incredible teacher. He taught here in Garfield High School. His kids all scored very highly on all standardized tests. He had about 60 or 80 kids in a class. It's unheard of. And he could do it. So yeah, great teachers can supersede family problems.
yes.
Granted, if you're getting a kid who's got a single parent, maybe they're a drug addict, sure, you're gonna have problems. But it's not impossible to overcome
No.
those problems.
And I would never use the word impossible. But it's more challenging. I've
Yeah.
actually seen there's a fabulous school over in England called the Michaela School, and what's interesting about them is they are inner city. They do not get to pick their students. They are similar to what would be a charter school here. They wear uniforms, but the school operates like a family. And so regardless where these kids come from, they come into school, they are seated at lunch, they eat family style, everybody eats the same food, they
Mhm.
salute the same flag. They operate very much like a family, with interwoven support throughout the system, which is not how our schools work here. So there are other ways to improve the system.
Well, yeah,
but
but you see, what you just described sounds like I'm an old guy, and I went to school in the 1950s, and it sounds like we didn't wear uniforms, but there was something of a dress code. We couldn't really wear jeans to school, and we had very big classes. I have a picture in my bedroom of my third grade class. I have 43 students, no aides. No, we had no assistant. We had a principal. Period. That was the only administrator. And everybody, we either brought lunch or had the school lunches were served, and of course that's the same slop everybody got. But I mean, as I say, it sounds like the way schools used to be. Now it's obviously very different.
yeah, I mean, now I think children are much more isolated in school, and that social fabric has disintegrated to a large degree. So there are a lot of,
Yeah,
let's just say there are a lot of different strands that
yeah,
you could work on to improve the academic outcomes of children in schools.
sure.
But certainly one of them is the unions. One of them is what they're teaching, what's involved in the textbooks. I just saw a video today that was taken. It looked like it was sort of taken clandestinely. It's from Illinois. And the directive looks like it's for teachers. The directive is there are certain things that are not up for discussion in the classroom. And so we do not allow the children to ask questions about these things because the social sciences, the social scientists have by and large agreed, like most of them agree on climate change. So we don't ask if the climate is warming, we ask what can we do about the climate change that's happening? And we don't ask if vaccines are effective because most doctors agree. And so that science is what's known as settled. And so when the system of schooling precludes questions, which is the way we learn, then it is no longer a system of education.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. And I've written a lot about the indoctrination in schools, and it's especially scary here in California because of it. Little Johnny decides he wants to, switch his gender. The teacher is not allowed to tell the parent. I mean, we have this huge, I guess you'd call it a dichotomy or it's really a chasm between what the school does and what the family does. I mean, it used to be the families and schools work together.
Right.
Not anymore. The schools have their Marxist agenda, frankly. It's all about indoctrination. Not every school, of course, but a lot of schools about indoctrination. And they're just fads. There's the transsexual fad, there's Black Lives Matter fad, there's the woke fad,
Right.
DEI fad, and these things come and go like hula hoops and mood rings. And the schools are ground zero for all this, pardon my expression, BS. Yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, forget about, and we talked about the NAEP scores. Yeah, the students are being dumbed down, but they sure know that, what a transsexual is, and they sure know what Black Lives Matter is.
And how many genders? Oh, wait, no, they revised that several times.
Yeah, that I know about. Yeah, yeah.
Unlock a world of career possibilities with Praxis, a transformative program designed to help teens skip traditional college and start building a successful career right away. Praxis connects young people with real-world job opportunities, mentorship, and hands-on experience in fields like marketing, sales, and business development. Their teen course equips students with the skills they need to thrive in today's competitive workforce. Visit discoverpraxis.com/teen-course and use code SAM15 to get 15% off the teen course. Don't wait for a degree to start your career. Take the first step today with Praxis. One of my favorite products that I've recommended to a number of people is Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil. Quiet brain is what I need when I'm trying to go to sleep. What's great about Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil, it's a unique proprietary blend of essential oils, very pure and therapeutic grade essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, lavender, and sandalwood. And I love it. It helps me sleep at night. And most importantly, it's very easy to travel with. That first night in a hotel for me is always a little bit dicey. Am I going to sleep well? And with Neuromatics Quiet Brain Oil, really helps me. So I highly recommend it. You can get it at sorbostudios.com, and we'll see you there. Are you looking for quality homeschooling resources? Apologia offers top-notch curriculum for all ages. It's designed to inspire a love of learning and a strong foundation in faith. Head over to apologia.com and use code SORBO10 to get 10% off your next purchase. Equip your children with the best education tools and save today at Apologia, the trusted choice for homeschooling families. Hey there, if you're enjoying today's episode, take a moment, leave me a 5-star review, please. This is the way that people will be able to discover these conversations. And by the way, I will be reading some of these reviews on air. So whether yours is poignant or humorous or simply thoughtful, take a moment, leave me the review, and maybe yours will be the one that is chosen to read on air and share with the world. Thanks so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. I appreciate you. So let me ask you this. How do you correlate funding to academic outcomes? Is there a correlation?
Absolutely not. I mean, there's a wonderful site called Just Facts, and they document how much we keep spending more and more money on education, and it does not equate to better results. I mean, back in the 50s when I went to school, it was much, much lower. The funding, the teacher pay, and obviously, I'm talking about correcting for inflation. And yeah, and of course, this is the mantra of the teachers' unions. Oh, we just need more money. And when you ask them how much more, they give you a dollar sign and then MORE, because there's no amount. It's whatever you spend, it's going to have to be more.
That's the problem with more. You can never have more.
Exactly.
You never get there.
It's never enough. Yeah.
Well, I noticed that you
only that amount is more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I noticed that you pointed out that when you went to school, you had a principal. You didn't have any assistant principals. You didn't have teachers' aides. You didn't have, the cadre of support for the administrative state in the schools. And I felt like you were trying to take a dig at the current administrations that are, sort of top heavy in our school system today.
Oh yeah, well the administrator, when I was in my middle school in the mid 2000s, we had assistant principals for this, that, the other thing. I don't know what half these people did, but they were on the payroll, and we had guidance counselors and school psychologists. And as I said, when I was a kid, we had a principal. Period. And we may have had a guidance counselor at some point, but that was it as far as admin goes, and everybody else was a teacher. We didn't have teachers' aides. We didn't have paraprofessionals. Sometimes parents would help out if necessary, but it was a much simpler and a much less expensive way to run a school system. But I sound like a geezer, but it's true.
But why do you suppose that shifted? How did they accomplish that shift? What was the excuse that they gave?
Well, because it sounds good. Gee, if we just had a little more money, we could hire this professional and do this, and taxpayers either were blind to it or bought into it, because the public schools don't exist without taxpayers' help. I mean, that's the whole point of a government school. Who's footing the bill? The private individuals. Right.
Incidentally, I would say that rather than school choice, where the government collects the money and sends it to the parents and then gets to control what the parents do with it, I go for tax credit. If you have a child, the government just says this much money you don't have to pay in taxes because you're sending your child to a school. So we want you to use that money for education for the child.
Right. I'm not a big fan of all things Trump, but this is a very good thing. And the federal government, I should say, is doing this or trying to do it. It's
trying to do it.
I'm writing about it as we speak. I should have it out tomorrow.
Oh, good.
About this. Yeah, and it's people get a dollar for dollar tax credit by just, and people are still paying the same amount of taxes. It's not like people are getting a tax dodge here. They're just allowed to shift a certain money to a scholarship granting organization who then will fund students. And the federal plan now is not for all students. It's just for families earning, I think it's 300% more than the average in their area. It's a very oddly worded thing, frankly, but that's
Right.
what it is. So,
That's
so like
not it. But
the billionaires aren't going to be able to take advantage of this, despite all the naysayers. Saying,
right.
oh, you're funding the rich people. What nonsense.
Yes. Agreed. So your piece also points out that charter schools have not experienced as sharp declines, although they are still in decline compared to their performance over the,
Right. Yeah, well,
past.
charter schools will do better because they don't have, they typically are not unionized. There are independent charters, and then there are charters that are aligned with the school district. And we don't need to get into the weeds there, but basically the independent charters are not unionized, and therefore, ergo, they're going to do better. They can get rid of teachers who aren't functioning. Period.
Right. And then lastly, because the teachers go to these training colleges, we have to fix the training colleges.
Yeah, the ed schools, as the great Walter Williams once phrased it, he said the ed schools are the slums of our colleges. Yeah, I mean, I took
It's very clever.
classes to get my degree. I got 10 A's and a B, and I basically slept through them. And I'm not bragging, believe me, because I didn't do anything to deserve the A's. I just showed up. It's a joke. The ed schools are terrible. I mean, I went to a supposedly esteemed school, Cal State at Los Angeles. It turned out many teachers, and it was a joke, frankly. I did it because I had to do it to keep my credential.
Right. What is overall? What is your education background, and how do you use it today?
I got a BA in sociology from Queens College. I graduated in 1970, and I was sort of not really thinking about my future. If I was thinking about my future, I wouldn't have majored in sociology because I had no plan on teaching it or going to grad school for it. And a BA in sociology doesn't really do much for you. In fact, my first job after graduating college is driving a cab, which is, it's good. That's what a BA in sociology will do for you. And so, yeah, I obviously hindsight's always 2020, and I certainly would have done things differently. But you can't change what happened 55 years ago.
What advice would you give your younger self of any age?
Don't major in sociology. Take some classes, but major in something that you can use in future endeavors. I would.
What convinced you to major in sociology? Like, why would you be?
Because I was interested in this subject. I started off in psychology, but I knew I wasn't going to go to graduate school and become a psychologist. So I was still interested in people and what motivates people, and basically sociology is psychology, but in group behavior, how people behave in groups. And it was a subject that interested me, so I just pursued it. It wasn't very wise. I wish that I had. Maybe my parents could have done a better job of talking me out of it. Because, as I said, I had no plans on pursuing it once I graduated. Once I graduated, I didn't have a skill.
Discover the wonders of biblical history with Biblical Excavations by David Nekrutman. Teach teens to love the Bible, defend their faith, and know God more deeply with a unique collection of educational resources that bring the ancient world of the Bible to life. Visit biblicalexcavations.com/curriculum and use code SAM to get 10% off your next purchase. Dive into God's Word and enrich your homeschooling journey today. Protect your family from harmful and explicit content online with Canopy, the only solution that filters and monitors in real time. With Canopy, you can rest easy knowing your children are browsing safely and securely. Visit canopy.us and use code SAM20 to get 20% lifetime discount on any subscription. Keep your loved ones safe online with Canopy today. So let me just get it straight. You needed a college degree, but nobody really told you, but your college degree should be in something useful.
Well, I got a college degree because everybody in my neighborhood was getting a college degree. That's what we did then. And in I think my last year, I had this moment that I was going to actually have to get a job at some point, and what was I going to do? And then I found out New York City was short on teachers, and that if you took 12 units, in other words, 4 3-credit classes, you could get a teaching credential. And I said, okay, well, that sounds like a plan. So I did that. I stayed in college an extra year, got my credential, and then as I said, I drove a cab for 6 months because I wasn't dying to get into teaching. Then eventually I did get into teaching and subbed in inner city schools, which is in my neighborhood in Queens, New York. And then I got a full-time job in Manhattan at a school in Harlem, and that's where I got laid off from, as I mentioned earlier, in 1975.
So really, your training was not overly much towards teaching.
Oh
Your
no,
training was general, basically sociology, general education, and then you qualified to teach. You went to some qualifying classes to teach.
yeah. As I said, yeah, with 4 classes I took because they're short on teachers, so they had to drop their credentialing mandate. They didn't have to get a real credential. It was sort of an emergency credential, so I did that.
I mean, nothing. Look, you've taught for many years, and I'm sure you're a great teacher, but people need to understand where teachers come from. And
well, I don't think there's no simple answer there. I mean, teachers, I would think,
right, but
or I would.
the assumption that parents make is the government runs the schools, the government knows what it's doing, the government hires the best teachers that they can get. No, not necessarily. Like, and not saying that there aren't good teachers out there. Of course there are. And you probably were one of them. Let's face it, you kind of fell into teaching because, well, you needed a job and they needed somebody warm to warm the seat with all the kids in the classroom.
Yeah.
And the offset is what the default we're thinking is, oh no, Mr. Sand, he studied this subject. He's an expert and he knows really well what he's doing, right? And you just are like, well, I parked my cab outside and here I am. Where do I go?
Yeah, I mean, I think once I got into it, I was a good teacher. I was certainly dedicated. I cared about the kids. I tried to help the kids.
Let me
And
ask
then,
you something.
yeah.
Do you think that may be like just a holdover of you were raised by good people, you're a good person, and so you found yourself being a teacher and you're like, well, I better do a good job because that's what my character is telling me to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically a good person. I'm not a
Yeah.
saint, despite what my wife tells me. Ha ha ha.
But you're funny.
I just but just wanted a good job. I mean,
Yeah.
you're dealing with the future of, we're dealing with children and the future of the country. So
Right.
you
But here's the
naturally want to
problem.
do a good job and help them learn and
Right.
grow up to be good citizens and not beat
I'm
up the kids sitting next to them.
right. So let me ask you this, because young people today, there's been an erosion in character training. So young people today, maybe they're not that interested in helping their fellow man. Maybe they don't have the character that tells them you should do a good job for the sake of doing a good job. Maybe their character tells them you better show up, but if you're drunk, it's not that big a deal because nobody's going to report you.
Hmm.
So maybe that's part of the whole degradation of the system, is that culturally we're falling apart.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, fair point, Sam. Yeah, our culture is in trouble. We're definitely there's definitely a culture war, whereby people, are single people. back in the day didn't get divorced, at least until the children are grown. I mean, without getting too personal, that my parents fell into that shortly after I moved out in my early 20s. My mother left my father. And I was never told this, but I had every reason to believe that they stayed together for the sake of the child. People tend not to do that anymore. Like they have an issue. Well, okay, I'm out of here. And, I'll send
Sure.
you some money for little Bobby and Janie. And that's not good. Yeah, we definitely have cultural issues that are also part of the problem.
Okay, so last question, because I've taken enough of your time already, but this has been really an interesting conversation, and I thank you for it. What is the most urgent cultural shift needed today to get us back on track?
Well, as I've said, and I hate to repeat myself, but the best thing we can do is get the government out of education, leave it to parents. I mean, it'll be a wake-up call. And I sort of have a system worked out. Not that anybody's going to listen to me. Well, you'll listen to me, hopefully. But we just get rid of one grade a year, because doing it, if we got rid of the government out of education completely now, we couldn't do it. It just would be impossible. We couldn't scale this. So I'm saying, let's say in 3 years we just get rid of kindergarten and we start privatizing kindergarten. Then the next year we privatize first grade. So we have kindergarten and first grade privatized, then second, and so on up to grade 12. So it would take about 15 years to gradually get the government out of education. Now, it would be a big change. I don't know if it would be a monstrous change. I don't know the right adjective to use, but it would certainly be a big change, a change for good that would affect everybody, because the government's not doing a good job and giving parents, parents couldn't just like send a little Johnny or Janie off to school for 7 hours and do whatever they do. They have to be in charge, and that would be a wake-up call for parents too. So I think
Well said.
everybody would benefit by that. I mean, I think it would clearly change the country for the better. How much better, I don't know, but I think that would be an incredible move.
Larry Sand, you're a dreamer, but I love it. I'm
Thank
gonna
you, Sam. A
I'm gonna
pleasure to
put
be
that
with you.
in my notes. It was a pleasure to have you. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for the Sam Sorbo Show this episode. I hope you enjoyed that. And just remember, speak truth, speak it boldly. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in the Sam Sorbo Show are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the Herzog Foundation.